Hi guys, welcome everyone. My name is Vera and today I'm going to show you how to paint our really cute garden fairy door. I will be referring to this image every now and then, but you can see it at all times on the right side of our screen here. So before we start, let's go through everything that we will need. First thing you're going to need is a pre-sketched outline of a garden fairy door. I have it right here. If you don't know where to locate it, it is in the description of this video. It's a downloadable, it's a Dropbox link, so just copy it and paste it in your browser and the image will pop up, so feel free to download it and transfer it to your paper. If you're not sure how, a couple of different ways. You can do it through the window, print out on a home printer and do it through the window, put it over the window, the paper, and then your drawing paper over the printout, and then with a pencil outline it. Or you can even pull up the digital image on laptop or computer or even large tablet and just place your drawing paper right over the device, crank up the brightness, and outline it with a pencil. So that's one. Next thing you're gonna need is a watercolor paint. I will be using my koi set. You can use any kind of set that you have. There's no particular set that you have to use. Whatever you have. If it's a kid's watercolor with only 6 colors, that's totally fine. If it's a massive watercolor with 36 colors, that's totally fine too. If you don't have any watercolor but you really want to give it a shot, you're welcome to use watercolor pencils or even acrylic paint. Just make sure you water it down really well. So you're welcome to use any paint. Acrylic watered down to watercolor consistency works as well. All right, and I'm gonna be showing you guys my colors right here because I know it's very hard to see on my actual watercolor because they're so concentrated, right? You can't tell what's what. So I'm gonna be showing you colors on this paper. You don't have to follow me on colors precisely. You're welcome to use your own colors. This is very customizable painting. So if you replace pretty much every single color, maybe except of green leaves, you will still end up with a really beautiful result. So you don't have to follow super precisely on color as long as you follow general idea of steps. You can definitely experiment with colors here. And we're gonna need a couple of different brushes. We always recommend having a few brushes, large, medium, and small. So in my case, because everything is so fine, I'm not really need a true large. This is gonna be my version of large. It's the largest one out of the 3. So again, technically it's not a large brush, but it's as big as I'll need it. I'm not going to need the brush any bigger than this. And I have 2 other pointy brushes. So this is going to be my small, this is going to be my medium. Technically, both of them are small brushes. Neither one of them is a true medium, but this one is going to be my medium because it's a little bit larger. And this is going to be my small because it's super, super fine. So you don't really have to have 3 brushes. 2 brushes is just fine too. So something small for details and something larger for larger areas. Or you can have 5 brushes, 10 brushes, as many as you want. Just have a variety of sizes so you can use larger brushes for larger areas and smaller brushes for smaller areas. That's pretty much a general idea here. Oh, and of course, ideally you want to use brushes made for watercolor because they're nice and soft, and they, as you can see, they have a really nice pointy tip to them, which makes your life a lot easier. So for watercolor, you always want to have brushes with a pointy tip. If you don't have them, not a problem, but it's going to be a little bit more difficult. All right, and of course you're gonna need a paper towel to dab your brush on and some water because we can't paint without water, especially watercolor. Watercolor love water. All right, so that's pretty much it. That's all our colors. So what I'm gonna start with here, there's no particular order really. You can start at any section of it and then work your way, but we're gonna be layering. So I'm gonna start at the door and then I'm gonna move on to everything else, and literally I'm just gonna do one layer on everything. Let it dry as we, let's say, start here and move on to the top and work a bit here. By the time we are done with first layer, this is going to be dry, so we can add second layer and so on. And we're just going to continue layering and layering and layering with the drying in between until we feel like it's done and it's beautiful and we love it. Oh, and by the way, guys, if this is your first time, just a heads up, you're more than welcome to pause the video. It's going to remain right here on YouTube. It's not going anywhere. So if you want to come back and do it some other day, that's totally fine. You don't have to do it exactly now if that doesn't work for you. All right, so I'm gonna start with a general base for my door. So for general base for my door, I think I'm gonna go with some light blue. Any light blue will work, whatever light blue you have there that you think is the best light blue. Grab that. I'm gonna go with, I have lots of blues by the way, so let's see. Maybe this one, but it really doesn't matter. We'll go with something like that. And I always put my color onto my palette first. I never go for straight from my, never go straight from this palette onto the paper. It's always from this palette onto the proper palette. And then from there, because here you can control how saturated or how transparent your color is going to be. This is why we have to put it here. It's watercolor, it loves water. We have to mix it with the right amount of water. And then I'm just gonna go and add first layer of that, pretty much covering the entire thing. Sometimes I would even just take straight water and help it out a bit with the straight water. And I'll take a little bit of that, and you see how nice and transparent it is, right? And there's an evenness to it. There are areas that are darker, there are areas that are lighter. I love that. Unevenness in my case is very intentional. So I'm just gonna add a bit of that on the bottom too. Super nice and light, right? Looks great. Now I'm gonna take a little bit of light green. Any light green will do, whatever light green you have. I'm gonna go with something like that maybe. Do you see just this light green right here? But honestly, any light green doesn't matter, whichever light green you have there. If you don't have any light green, it's easy to make light green. You basically take some yellow, some green, whatever you have, mix them up, and there you go. You got a light green. Or just water down your green, either is fine. And while it's still wet, I'm gonna go ahead and add just a little bit of this light green right in the middle here for additional, a bit of color. And now if you have a little bit of purple or a warmer blue, so for example for me, I have this warmer blues, right? This looks like ultramarine. Either one of them, they're a bit warmer. And you see they're less greenish, a bit more purpley. So I'm gonna take a touch of that and I'm gonna water it down as well. Do you see in comparison, this almost looks purple. It's not purple, it's blue. It's just warmer blue. So I'm gonna take a little bit of that and I'm gonna go ahead and I will add a bit of it here. Just the same way pretty much that we did with our green. We're gonna add our purpley blue. And I'm gonna wash it off as well, just with water to blend it a little bit more into surroundings. Because I added it only so it's not so boring the same color. I wanted just to have a bit more of different colors. And the rest of the colors I'm gonna add on the following layer, so I'm gonna let it dry up for a bit. As that's drying, we can move on a higher up areas. Oh, actually, before we do that, maybe I will switch a brush to a medium and I will do the little holes in there. So little holes in there, I'm going to use the same ultramarine color right now. I'm just going to do those little holes inside here. All right, moving to our flowers. So I'm going to start with flowers and do the greens after, because a lot of the greens come in contact with a door and the door is still wet. So if I do the greens now, they're all going to merge. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to be a mess. So I'm going to leave that. Maybe I'll color this one too, actually. I'll leave that to dry up a little bit. So the flowers, I have them in three different colors. I have pink ones, I have purple ones, and I have one that's more like a peachy color. So those are my colors. You're welcome to do your own colors. Your colors don't have to be exactly the same as mine. You choose your favorite colors and just stick with them, whatever that may be. So totally up to you. I'm gonna go with the same color. So I'm gonna start with the pink ones. So grab any pink that you have, whatever pink makes you happy on your palette. That's the pink that you're gonna use. I'm gonna put my pink right here. You see it's super saturated, but I'm gonna water it down a lot. I'm gonna make it super light. And with this light color, I'm literally gonna do the base on all my flowers that are gonna be pink. Not all flowers in general, but all the flowers that I'm planning to do pink. I'm gonna do the base on them. So with a large brush, whichever one is the largest or whichever one is appropriate, I'm just gonna go ahead and do the base for those flowers. You see, just really nice light base. All right, so I did the base. Now I'm gonna let it dry, and as that's drying, I'm gonna move to my purple flower. So again, whatever color, if you have a straight purple that you're hoping to use, great. If not, you can mix your own. You can make it lighter, darker, adjust it however you want it. This is my purple. This is how it comes. I'm just gonna stick with that. I'm gonna show you on this paper. This is what my purple looks like, so I'm gonna stick with that. I'm gonna take the same purple. I'm not gonna modify anything just yet. I might modify it at the later stages, but for now I'm just going to take it as is. And again, I'm just going to go and very lightly add a base to the flowers that are going to be purple. So nice and light. You don't want to get too dark, because then you're not going to have ability to add details. It's going to be difficult for you to create details on the dark base. So make sure your base is nice and light. All right, and my last one, which is going to be like a peachy color. So we're going to make that. If you have orange, great, grab some orange and then just add a touch of pink. That's how we're going to make the color. So I'm going to grab my orange. It's very reddish orange. You see, that's my orange. Now I'm going to add a touch of pink to it. So I'm mixing this and I'm mixing that. You can mix this and that too if you want. This is fine. Or if you have the right color that you just want to use, that's totally fine too. Whatever works for you guys. Okay, great. I'm liking this color. This looks nice. So I'm gonna go ahead and add the base in this color. So you see it's nice peachy. This is the best way I can describe it, like light coral, peachy color. I like it. That looks nice. Now we can do the base on green leaves. All of that is drying. So again, I'm just gonna take light green and see whichever brush works best. At this point, I think I'm going to switch to a medium brush versus large, because I was using large up to now, but I don't think I can do this with a large one. So I'm just going to take my medium brush And I'm gonna do my leaves. Now, the trick here is I'm not gonna do all of them. I'm gonna do most of them, but not all of them. And again, nice and transparent. You don't wanna have it too saturated. So that's my nice light warm green. So the trick is other ones, the ones that I'm leaving uncolored with this color, I'm gonna do with the light green as well, but I'm gonna do cold green, just to have variety of greens, so they're not all the same. You could simplify it and just do all of them the same. That's totally fine. It's not gonna affect it, but it's gonna be more interesting visually if you have a variety. So we're gonna try to do a bit of a variety here. There's no particular ones that you have to, follow me on and do this. Particular ones, light green, the other particular ones, dark green. Doesn't matter. Whichever one you want to do light green, whichever ones you want to do, sorry, not the dark green, cold green. Whichever ones you do cold green, it's fine. You choose which ones are going to be what. It doesn't matter. It's not specific. As long as you have a variety, that's what we're looking for here. All right, so I have some that are this beautiful light warm green, and now I'm gonna do some other ones that are gonna be cold green. So for the cold green, I'm just gonna grab a cold green. So if you have the cold green, something like an emerald color, something like this, do you see it's a bit on a bluer side? Great, you're gonna use that. But water down so it looks lighter, it doesn't look that dark. If not, what you're gonna do, you're gonna grab a standard green, whichever you have, and you're gonna mix it with some sort of blue. Again, doesn't matter which blue, but ideally something like this. So ideally lighter, colder blue. That's what you wanna mix it with. And that's gonna bring you right around here. It's gonna make it colder green. Because I do have that color pre-mixed, I'm just gonna grab it. But again, it's really easy to mix. Just any green you have plus a little bit of blue. And with this color, again, very light, you see super watered down. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna add first layer on the rest of the flower petals. You know, it kind of looks blah so far. It's part of the process. It always does. On the first stages, when you're just starting to lay out your foundation, you don't have any details yet, you don't have any contrast yet, it just always looks a little blah. But it will get there. It does get better as you go and layer and layer and layer. So if it just looks like me, that's all right. Stick with it and it will get better. All right, first layer looks awesome. Now we can do a little bit more background, a little bit of background, or we can do background later. It is totally fine either way. I wouldn't mind personally doing a little bit of it now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my larger brush and I'm gonna take some of that light green again, and you can make it either light or darker. And we're gonna add just a little bit in a couple areas. So I'm gonna add it some right here and right here. And this areas I'm gonna reserve for pink. So green, green, pink, pink. So I have my light green here. I'm gonna take some. Of quite a bit of water. I'm gonna go right here. I'm just gonna, in a very messy way, and again, you can do some areas a bit more of it, some areas a bit less of it. It doesn't have to be an even color. It can be a bit more visible and a bit less visible in different spots. I'm just gonna add that. And I'm gonna splatter. You see, I just splattered a little bit like that. It looks good to me. I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit more right here. And again, notice how watered down my paint is. Super, super watered down. Very light, but lots of water. Okay, and I'm gonna do the same with pink. So I'm gonna take the same pink that I was using, again, super watered down, because that's the trick. It needs to be super, super light. And I'm gonna go right here. Splatter a little bit too. Looks great. And again, if you want to, you can add a bit more of a darker one, so I can take a bit more saturated one and just, you know, add a couple of dots here so it doesn't look so even. So there are certain areas that are a bit lighter, certain areas that are a bit darker. Always makes it a lot more interesting when there is that variety of shades involved. So, and the last one where I'm going to add some pink is going to be right here. So again, I'm just going to go with that super watered down pink. I'm going to show you guys in a second closer look to what that looks like. And you can overlap a little bit your greens too. So when they connect, you don't have to. They can just end at a green. You don't have to overlap them, but if you want to, you could add a bit of a transition with overlapping. So this is pretty much what that looks like. Nice and light. And again, later on, we can add another layer if you wanted to. We can add a bit more splatter. So all that is doable. This is just for us to lay down that base. Okay, that looks great. It is a nice foundation here. So I'm gonna go back to my door and work a little bit on a door, because door is nice and dry and it doesn't connect with anything that's still wet. Where my leaves and my flowers, they do connect with that background that's still wet. So we're gonna let that dry a little bit more and let's work on our door. So you're gonna grab your medium brush or even small, whatever you prefer. And I'm gonna grab a teal color. So if you don't have teal color, it's easy to make. Let me show you. This is my teal, or at least the tealest one out of what I have. That's what I'm gonna use. If you don't have that, it's easy to make. So again, you're gonna mix green and blue. It's just this time you're gonna use majority of blue. So if let's say you have some light blue, something like that, just gonna grab a tiny touch of your light green and add it to it. Just a tiny touch of light green. If not, you can, don't worry, you don't have to make it complicated. You can just use light blue, no problem. But I'm gonna grab that teal because I have it. I'm gonna put it right here. And I'm gonna use it a bit more saturated than what I originally used. So if my first layer, I used super, super light colors. This time, I'm just gonna make it a little bit more saturated. And we're gonna start adding details. So I'm gonna add a couple lines here from, do you see the door frame? So this is our door, that's a door frame. So from the where the areas that connect, so where there are lines, right, where the doors and door frames and everything else connect. So I'm gonna highlight them, darken them technically. You see, make them a bit more contrast, but I'll also add a couple lines from the top and the bottom. I'll do the same all around here. So do you see I kind of darkened up all that area? And bring it down here. And again, I'm just using the same color still. Flicking some lines up here from the bottom up. And then inside the door, again, I'm gonna add a bit contrast onto those dividing line for wood board. So I'm gonna flick some from the top down, and then I'm gonna flick some from the bottom up. But just not, I guess, not as much as we did on a door frame, right? Because the door inside should remain a bit lighter than our frame, so we don't want to darken it up to the color as a frame, the same, tone of same darkness as a frame. So do you see overall it's still lighter, but just now it has a bit more division, a bit more contrast, a bit more detail, and that's exactly what we wanted to achieve here with adding this color. And we'll add a bit of that color on the bottom as well. Beautiful. Okay. We could technically work a bit more on our door. I find that it's pretty dry right away. It's not super wet, so we can't continue. So maybe as well, we may as well do a little bit more here before we move up. So now I'm gonna move to my green. So you're gonna grab any green, preferably I would say either cold or dark green. So what you want to avoid if you have a large palette is something like that. So just no lighter greens. This is fine. This is great. This is good. So something on a generally darker or dimmer side, doesn't have to be specifically cold. Just avoid this super vibrant lime-like or grass green colors. You want something deeper, something darker. Or if you only have one green, then that's the one. We're not gonna make it too complicated here. Whatever green you have, that's the green we're gonna use. If all you have is really cold green, so for example, for me, all my green is a bit on a colder side, all my dark greens are a bit on a colder side. So do you see, it's almost like emerald, right? That's my darker greens, they're all cold. So for me to make them a little bit warmer, you gotta add either red or brown. So a smidge of red or a smidge of brown, whichever you prefer, it's going to give you pretty much the same result. It's just if you add red, you're going to need to add a bit less of it versus if you add brown. If you add brown, you can add a bit more of it. If you add red, you can add a bit less of it. Or you can add some yellow too, that's totally fine as well. So just something to warm it up. So yellow, red, whatever, brown, all that will make it warmer. If you just add yellow, it's just gonna make it warmer, but not darker. If you add brown or red, it's gonna add it warm, make it warmer and darker. So whichever you want. I just needed to warm it up. So do you see I warmed it up with less, it looks less cold now. And I'm gonna grab my medium brush. I'm gonna take a little bit of that. Again, not crazy saturated, but quite visible. Not super light either. And I'm gonna go on the bottom here. I'm gonna add some from the bottom. So I'm gonna add it in a lot of areas where we just added teal, but not as much as teal. So do you see? I'm adding it here. I'm gonna add it on this frame as well, but again, just not as much. It's the amount that we're going to modify here. All the way here. So you see again another layer of complexity. That's exactly what we are going for here. Okay, and just a touch from the top on those separation lines. All right, looking good. Of course, some on the bottom, and that would be the end of that. Oops, a little too much. That's all right. A little bit on the bottom. Great. Now, with the same color, if we wanted to continue, we can do a little bit on our leaves, or we can move on to flowers and work on the flowers. I think we might as well, right? We already have the color. So with the same darker-ish green, but not crazy dark, we're gonna take some and we're gonna go on our leaves, and we're just gonna add a bit from the bottom where they grow from. You see, almost like adding a bit of definition there. We will add, by the way, this is not the final layer on our leaf, so we'll add another even darker one that will define them a bit more. So with this one, you can go a little bit further if you wanted to, because remember, we'll have one more, which one you can do, you know, a bit less and have a bit more definition. So this one is almost like our middle color. It's not our darkest one. So as you can see, I'm just flicking from where my leaves grow from towards the end, but not all the way. So maybe halfway, somewhere third way, somewhere 2/3 of the way. Trying to make it a bit different for every leaf. Maybe I'll add another And again, I'll show you guys a close-up in a second. Almost done. This one left. And then let's look closer at what that looks like. All right, you see? So now it's 2 layers, but still it's not that contrast. We're still gonna be adding darker color there. But for now, let's let it dry and we can move on to our first layer, well, first layer of contrast on our flowers because we have the underlay, right? So now we can add the first layer of color. Okay, let's see. So I'm gonna start with my pink. So I'm gonna take just a bit more of that pink. This time a little more saturated, not crazy saturated, just a little bit more saturated. Because again, I'm not doing the final layer. And I'm gonna add a bit of that darker shade to all those layers of flower. But don't do just really fine line, do quite a bit. Cover about maybe half or third of each section. And later on we will do that more contrast color. So this is not the one. This is more of a halftone. So this is what it looks like. Do you see? It has that second layer that separates flower onto more layers, but it's not those fine dark lines. It's not what we're doing here. My brush strokes are fairly wide, I would say. In comparison to the size of the flower. They're not wide in general, but because the flower is very small, they cover quite a bit. All right, so do you see so much better that layering? Now we can do the same thing with our purple, and we'll do the same thing with our peach. So we're going to take the same color, just a little bit more saturated. But remember, again, not crazy saturated. We're not looking for crazy dark. We're just looking for a little bit more saturated. And you can add, for example, to purple, you can make it a little bluer if you want. Get a bit more blue tone going by adding a smidge of blue paint to it. Or you can make it a little bit pinker and warmer by adding a smidge of pink paint to it. So you can adjust your color a little bit to make it more interesting, or just to, you know, fit your preference better. Okay, now I'm going to move to my peach one. I'm going to add a bit more red here. All right, beautiful. It looks great, I think. Okay, now I'm going to move to brown. So I'm going to take any brown that you have, whatever brown you have, just grab a little bit of that, but very light again. And if you don't have brown that looks light, you can, you know, just add a little bit of yellow, preferably you want to have light and warm brown here. So if your brown, the only brown, let's say, that you have, I'm going to show you on my palette. This is the brown I'm going to be using right now. So if all you have is this, or maybe even darker, add a little bit of yellow or orange to it to bring it to this. And then with that light brown, preferably warm, we're going to go in here and we're going to color this in. I'm also going to color in this one. And I'll color the door handle. And after that, we're gonna add the dark to it, but first we gotta wait, right, for it to dry up. And once it dries up, we're gonna add a bit of dark brown contrast. So as that's drying, let's work on something else that's dry and available. Oh, wait, before we do that, let's take a little bit of this brown, the light brown, and we're gonna add some on the bottom. So almost like we're imitating some sort of bricks or stones as the finish of the walls beside the door. So those walls beside the door, we're assuming that they're made out of brick or stone. Something beautifully textured. So we're imitating that. So we're gonna add a little bit of brown there. And now we're gonna wait for it to dry. And as it's drying, we could probably work a bit more on our leaves and on our flowers because that is already dry and it doesn't come in contact with anything that's still wet. So we're gonna do final color on our leaf. So you're gonna make the darkest green. So just try to make it a bit darker than previous time. Grab your green, whichever green you have, that's the darkest already, and just add a smidge of brown to it. Or if it's dark enough, you don't have to add anything, it's fine. You can add a smidge of black to it. I'm personally adding a smidge of brown to it. So do you see it's getting darker? I just got a smidge of this brown. This is what I did. I took this green and then added a smidge of this. And with this color, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add the final contrast. So here you wanna use either medium or small brush and just do those fine details. And notice how all the flicks that I'm doing, I'm still doing from where the leaf grows. So from the bottom towards the end. So we're just gonna go around and add that contrast to all our leaves. If there are a couple of leaves that you wanna skip and not add contrast, that's fine, go ahead. Don't add them, that's totally okay. It doesn't have to be on every single one. If you would rather skip a few, skip a few. If you would rather do it on every single one, that's okay too. And if you want to add maybe even a couple leaves that are not existent yet on your painting, that's okay too, you can. So yeah, I did a couple. I felt like it needs some there. So I added them. Right, I'm running out of my green. Let's make a little bit more. All right, my leaves are done. And now with this color, what I'm gonna do actually, I'm gonna add a bit of blue to it. So any blue, whichever blue you want. I'm going to take some warm blue, ultramarine blue, and add that to it. And with this, I'm going to add a bit more of those bricks. And a bit on the bottom too. All right. Now I'm going to move on to the contrast color on my flowers. So again, I'm going to start with my pink. If you want to, you can add a smidge of black or brown to your pink to just give it a bit more of that darkness, but only if you want to. I'm not saying it's necessary. I'm gonna add a tiny smidge of brown. Do you see? If you add too much, it's gonna be dim, and you don't want that. You don't want to get it to get too dim. So I'm literally just adding a tiniest little dot. Otherwise, I find that it's nice and, you know, pink and stuff, but it's not contrast enough for me personally. All right, so you see so much better, a lot more contrast. And I'm gonna do the same on purple and on orange. Let's go to my purple next. I'm not adding anything to purple, I'm just gonna use it as is, because purple, I find that it's generally fairly dark color as is, but if you need to, definitely add whatever you need to add to it. You don't have to do the whole flower either. You can do just the middle or just one side, wherever you want to have a bit more contrast. So for me, I'm going to focus a bit more on this side, on the bottom, versus doing the whole flower with even amount of paint, of dark paint. I'm just going to focus on one side versus the whole thing. All right, one last purple flower left. This one. Awesome. And I may as well add a bit of contrast here too. Done, done, done. And now I'm gonna do my orange flower. So again, the same paint, I'm just gonna make it darker by adding a bit more red. I'm gonna do a contrast this way. You can add a bit of brown instead of red or orange. Anything that makes it darker and kind of stays within the same or similar color scheme is good. All right. Don't they look beautiful? I think they look great, personally. I like it. So now I'm gonna grab dark brown, whatever dark brown you have. If you don't have any dark brown, this one is mine. This is what I'm using. If you don't have any, just grab whatever brown you have and you can add a little bit of black to it. That will make it into a dark brown. And with this dark brown, I'm gonna first add a bit of contrast here, almost like an outline. And I'm gonna add a bit of shadow on the bottom here. So again, I'm adding the contrast. So I'm starting around the door. So between the door and the door frame. And a little bit on those to separate the pieces of wood that the door is made out of. Then to separate the door frame from, I guess, second door frame. Inner door frame from outer molding or whatever that is around the door frame. Again, a little bit on the bottom. And now if you want with this brown to add anything else, you could. For example, you can even choose a couple spots on the leaves and add a bit of brown. You don't have to. You can add it in some middles or wherever on the flowers for additional contrast. You can, I mean, it's very optional. You don't have to. And then what I'm going to finish with is I'm going to take, it's almost done. I'm going to take my green. Any green will do, but preferably something on a darker side. And I'm going to add a couple swirls. And then I'm going to finish with a bit more of a colorful splatter. So I'm going to take either pink, not red, brighter pink or, brighter green and have a bit more of that. So let's see. And this one you can actually dab up with your paper towel because you see it almost looks black, right? Because it's so concentrated. But if I lightly dab it up with a paper towel, it removes that excess paint. And now they actually look just like a brighter pink, right? So we can add a bit of that for additional oomph. And again, so do you see they almost look black? They all look super dark. So I'm gonna tap, tap, tap lightly to make them darker pink versus just super dark red. If you wanted, you could do that with green, but I think this is good. I don't even want to do it with green after. And ta-da! It is officially done. And I really like it. I think it's great. So I'm going to take my small brush and I'm going to sign it. I'm going to sign it with my brown. I'll put my initials right here. You can sign it anywhere you want. If you prefer, you can sign it with a pen or a fine tip Sharpie or pencil, whatever works for you guys. And ta-da! We are officially done. Well, thank you all for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And if you want to share your results, there is a link in the description of this video where you can share your results. I'd love to see how they turned out, and I'm sure the other people who participated would love to see that too. So you can just follow that link and post it there. Would love to see how it turned out. If you'd rather not, that's totally fine. No problem at all. And let's do this again next time. Feel free to like this video and subscribe. We have a lot more coming up. I'll see you guys next time. Bye everyone.